Dear investor, good morning. My name is Alex and I'm one of the founders at Make It Studio. And today I'm going to introduce you to what is a great first in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, namely the establishment of an investment vehicle dedicated to startups at the idea stage only. So I would have clearly preferred to be able to present this to you face to face and discuss this with you. But unfortunately, here we are. And in exceptional circumstances, we need exceptional measures, right? So I swapped my containment suit for my beautiful naked sweater to show this video and present this new initiative to you so that we can activate it as quickly as possible. So I know there are some of you who are quite fond of startups when they are at the idea stage. So before I introduce you to why you as an angel investor and we as a venture studio form the ideal partnership, I suggest to start with a little background first. Let's start by analyzing the journey of an entrepreneur from the moment he or she has that famous good idea. By roughly summarizing a little bit, we can distinguish two types of entrepreneurs. On the one hand, there are those who manage to raise a small initial investments, particularly from the three Fs, so fools, friends, and family, and who manage to create their MVP or at least the first version of their product. These entrepreneurs do their homework, and after a few months, we find ourselves with two categories of projects that need to raise funds to continue the adventure. So on one hand, you have tier one projects which have a product and generate revenue, and then you have the so-called tier two projects which have succeeded in creating a first version of their solution, which have put it on the market but have little or no market traction. And then on the other hand, we have a whole series of entrepreneurs who, unfortunately, do not have access to the three Fs. They do their homework with the means at hand and try to raise funds just with a nice little pitch deck. All right, so if we go through the same exercise again, but this time from the point of view of the pre-seed investor, what deals are actually available to him or her? Well, on the one hand, he or she has access to tier one type projects, which have a product and generate income. Fortunately, these projects are few in number, and there is a strong competition between investors for these projects, which makes them, often too expensive. Usually, these projects are closely followed by investment funds and other professional investors who often win these deals. Well, then there are the tier two type projects, where the team that carries the project has demonstrated a certain capacity for execution and a form of commitment because it has succeeded in creating a product. These projects are more numerous than tier one projects, but unfortunately, the fact that they have little market traction when they come before investors, not only makes them riskier, but also implies that the product they have created is not exactly what the market expects. As a result, some of the funds they raise will have to be used to redo what they have already supposedly done, and makes it very difficult to calculate a fair valuation. And then finally, there are the tier 3 top projects, which are very numerous, but also very risky because they are still at the idea stage. Finally, when we take a step back, we can see that although startups are trendy at the moment, there is a low volume of good tech projects available to investors. Competition is therefore high, and the best entrepreneurs can literally choose their investors. As a result, investors, especially business angels or angel investors, are increasingly tempted to invest in projects where a product exists but generates little or no traction at all. Although having a product demonstrates certain execution capabilities and a form of commitment from the entrepreneurs, unfortunately, in our experience, this is just not enough and does not really validate what we consider to be the most important aspect of a project, and that is market traction. So the problem we face today is the very low volume of quality tech startups available to angel investors. And this is quite surprising, given that when we look at the ecosystem today, we realize that there are a large number of people who have great ideas for tech startups, But most of them never see the light of day because these entrepreneurs do not have access to the necessary financial means and sometimes do not have the right skills to turn these ideas into a business. So you, as an angel investor, what if you could invest small tickets in some of the most promising tier 3 tech startups and turn them into tier 1, and thus have access to a new deal flow of high quality and promising startups? Do you think it might be too risky though? I mean, it's always said that an idea has no value and that the art really lies into the execution. Do you love those projects that are at the idea stage, but you're not just used to investing in those kind of projects because of their risky nature? Well, that's where we as Make It Studio come to the picture. So Make It is a venture studio. And in other words, we are professional startup builders. So we use our entrepreneurial and technical skills, such as design, development, engineering, marketing, to create and grow startups every day. Since 2014, we have created 6 startups, which today have a cumulative valuation of around 20 million US, which is around $22 million. And those numbers are just based on their last fundraising round. Now, something worth mentioning is that 4 of these 6 startups were created back in Belgium, where the studio was originally launched. And Belgium has 11 million inhabitants, so it's a very small market in comparison to the US. And we decided to move down here because we wanted to leverage the greater US market and scale those numbers. We didn't have any money at first, so we had to bootstrap ourselves to create those companies. And we did this by selling our expertise to other startups. And then, instead of buying, expensive cars, we decided to invest all of our profits in a team that could take more risk in building those startups. So we've been able to apply our skills on 6 startups that we created from the ground up, all having a technological component and are even active in different industries, therefore demonstrating that our methodology is industry agnostic. 4 of our startups were created in Belgium. That's where our venture studio is originally from. And then the 2 latest ones we created in Los Angeles, California, where we have been active since 2019 in January. To bring some more clarity, here is what our portfolio gives with a few numbers. The total value of these 6 startups based on their last fundraising round is around $22 million. And we currently hold 18% of equity on average per startup. So the value of our shares therefore represents around $4 million. Now, knowing that we invest in general the equivalent of $110,000 per startup, it means that we invested in total $660,000. And so our investments have been multiplied by 6 until now. Of course, there still exists a certain risk because those companies haven't exited yet. For some, though, we're already able to get a return on our investments through liquidity events that happened during prior fundraising rounds. So we're quite confident for the future because when you create a company or startup at Make It, our goal is not to chase the unicorn, but really to create sustainable startups, which by definition are companies that have exponential growth potential, but have, most importantly, a healthy revenue model. And so our 6 startups today are all generating revenue. It also seems important to me to present our vision to you. And so at Make It, our vision is to have an impact on our society through the creation of valuable startups around the world. Now, to accomplish our vision, we needed to become a startup machine. That is why we have been working so hard over the last 6 years to create a specific methodology that allows us to test any idea in order to de-risk it before eventually investing resources in its development. At Make It, we're therefore able to transform an idea into a startup that generates revenue on average after 4 months. So in that period of time, we're able to test an idea, generate traction to validate its main assumptions, and create an MVP, like a first version of the solution, that allows us to bring value to our customers. Now, in comparison, we observe that a first-time entrepreneur takes on average 1 year to reach that same level of maturity, if he or she even gets there. I mean, on a personal level, for my first venture, it took me 1 year, even more than a year, to realize that, after spending all my resources, that I didn't have any product market fit at all. Yes, I mean, I had to learn it the hard way, but I guess, that's probably the best way, right? So that you can fully understand how we go from an idea to a startup that generates revenue after a few months only, I created another video that I really invite you to see afterwards. The video is posted below on the website, and it illustrates our methodology through a concrete example, which is that of Park Place, one of our startups in LA. I tell the story about how we basically started from an idea, written on a napkin, to a startup that generated $93,000 in revenue after only a few months. Now, the goal of this new investment vehicle is therefore not only to create an investment fund that allows you to invest in startups at the idea stage, but also to give you access to new tier 1 tech startup deal flow at a low and measured risk. So, how do we do that? Well, on one hand, by creating this famous investment vehicle, and on the other hand, by making sure that it's a venture studio that takes care of selecting the ideas and making sure that the execution is being done properly. So from the idea phase to startups that have their first clients, that generate revenue, and that are mature enough to be able to raise funds at the pre-seed level afterwards. All right, so at Make It, we love numbers, right? Kind of like you guys, I guess. So what we've done here is we have compared two investment scenarios. One is a traditional investment scenario, which is the one you're probably most familiar with. And on the other hand, a scenario within the framework of the investing in ideas. The idea here is not to look at the numbers and pick and choose, but to look at the trends and orders of magnitude. So in the example here, we take the case of an investor who invests $200K per year in startups. Based on the traditional scenario, we say that he or she will invest, $100K in 3 startups per year. And then in the investing in ideas scenario, he or she will invest in a larger number of startups. In this case, then, with a $30K ticket per startup. Now, in terms of the valuation of the startup, well, we can estimate that the pre-seed round is valued at $2 million on average, where an idea is given a fixed valuation of $1 million. The success rate is obviously higher on the right, since it's the venture studio that takes care of the whole execution of the project. We assumed an exit after 5 years at the same valuation for both at a $25 million. We see that the dilution rate is high on the right because an additional investment round is added by investing at the idea stage. And so, if we run the calculation, here are the results we get. For an investor who invests $200K per year for 2 years, in the classic scenario, we see that at the end of the 5th and 6th year, there is only one startup that survives and makes an exit. So we see that this investor can expect to get a total value of $950K at the end of this exercise. In the investing in idea scenario, we expect that in the 5th year, 3 startups out of 10 survive, and 3 others at the end of year 6. This means that an investor who invested $300K for 2 years will get a $3.5 million back. So here we see that an investor who invests smaller tickets earlier, but in a larger volume of startups that are co-created with the venture studio, you can expect a return on investment that is at least twice as large compared to what he or she could get in a traditional investment scenario. Well, dear investor, if you agree with that, let me introduce you to this new investment vehicle that we call 3i. So 3i, what is it? It's a 300K SPV that will allow us to invest in 10 startups at the idea stage over the next 12 months. For each idea, the SPV will invest 30K against 3% equity in each startup. In terms of the valuation of these ideas, we have decided to have a fixed valuation method, which is $1 million per idea. Now, as explained earlier, it is therefore Make It that will select these 10 ideas and it will take care of all the execution. The goal is that for the most promising projects, 4 months after starting to work on them, we'll be able to bring them to a sufficiently advanced level of maturity to be able to proceed to a next fundraising round at a valuation estimated at $3 million. So obviously, the angel investor who will support this investment vehicle will have a priority on a next round of investment and will benefit from a 30% discount on these startups when they raise the next round. These same investors will also be able to submit their own ideas, and for those who wish, you can roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty with us on some of these projects. Last but not least, this SPV to invest in ideas will give the opportunity to bright people who have ambitious visions to shape them and bring them to life. And by removing the dependencies to money, education, and even the technology that they might not have, we're enabling any entrepreneur who is driven and is committed to build a successful startup. So that's all very nice and all, but how do we activate 3i? Well, we, Make It, are looking for 10 pioneers ready to invest 30K each to bring 3i to life and join us in this new entrepreneurial adventure. Hey, that's it for the SPV to invest in ideas. For the rest, I invite you to go a little further down on the website where you will be able to do 3 things. First, you'll be able to download the slides used in this presentation. Then you'll be able to see, and I really invite you to do that, a video in which I explain the methodology we use to go from an idea to a startup that generates income in a few months only. And then finally, there will be a form that you can use to send us all your questions, your comments, your suggestions, and of course, your mark of interest. Guys, thanks so much for listening and take care. Bye-bye.